Greetings everyone and welcome to today's show. My name is Watak Emmanuel and today we are going to discuss about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. We all recognize this day is internationally recognized, and today marks the beginning of the 16 days of activism. This year's theme is Invest to Prevent Gender-Based Violence. As Salvation Army, we join the rest of the world to condemn gender-based violence. And today, we are here to discuss with a topical discussion of unveiling gender-based violence in human trafficking. This event, or these days of activism, are recognized annually, and they begin on 25th of November to 10th of December. And today, for 2023, today marks the beginning of the 16 days of activism. Once again, you are most welcome. And with me, I have a great team of panelists whom we are going to discuss and have a conversation on this critical issue of gender-based violence. They come with vast knowledge and with good experience in the field of social justice. My name is Watak Emmanuel, and I want to welcome one of our panelists today to greet us so that we are able to start. Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, viewers. I'm so happy to be on this talk show today to discuss issues pertaining women, especially issues of gender-based violence. My name is Julian Ongodia, and I work as the Research Policy and Advocacy Coordinator, the Anti-Human Trafficking Project Uganda, under the Salvation Army.
Thank you so much, Miss Julian, and you're most welcome, and we hope to have an interactive session. And with me also, I have a gentleman. Sir, please, you're welcome. Please, you can't introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. My name is Alex Kundu. I work as a Community Prevention Coordinator in Anti-Human Trafficking Project Uganda. Viewers, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alex and Miss Julian. And viewers, in the next 1 hour, we are going to dig deep in understanding gender-based violence in human trafficking. Let me start with you, Madam Julian.
Yes.
We are talking about gender-based violence. What is gender-based violence?
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Emma. Gender-based violence, I will define it. It has a universal definition, I would say, that these are harmful actions that are directed at an individual or a group of individuals based on their gender or sexual orientation. This kind of violence often targets women and girls, but it also affects men and any other individual who does not conform to the traditional norms of the society. These harmful actions include both physical, sexual, or psychological harm. And if I may, there are some examples. We see domestic violence, we see sexual assault, we see sexual harassment, and also a form of discrimination in this. I believe that now with this talk show, we should be able to address these issues, create the awareness, and be able to have strategies on how we can be able to speak about them, but also prevent them from happening, so that each individual is able to enjoy their rights and their well-being.
Yeah, I think that's quite a comprehensive and a deep understanding of gender-based violence. And viewers, in regards to our topic, maybe just to Mr. Alex, Miss Julian has told us or has defined for us gender-based violence, and for the viewers and for people to understand what is human trafficking.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
For giving me this chance to uncover to the public on the definition of human trafficking. According to Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2009. Human trafficking refers to we define human trafficking in 3 elements.
Yes.
One is the act, where there is recruitment, because normally the traffickers, they recruit the victims. Then from there, they transport them. After transporting them, they are harbored somewhere before they are being taken to be exploited. Then another element is called means. When you talk of means, we have force, we have fraud, then the traffickers go to the extent of even abusing power because of their authority. And then the last one, we are having purpose, whereby there is sexual exploitation and forced labor. So you find that in that exploitation part of it, our victims are subjected to, as I said, forced labor, organ removal. We have, sexual harassment. We have early marriages and so forth. Yeah.
I think that's quite, I think what I pick is that human trafficking has 3 main components that we're looking at here. There is the act, the means, and the purpose. And I think from what Ms. Julian explained and what I said, there are some key common issues that we're identifying here. And maybe back to Ms. Julian, what could be the main cause of gender-based violence?
Okay, we have a number of causes.
Yes.
And one of them is lack of education, education and awareness. Normally, communities may not be aware of the rights that they have, and thus the dominant gender that has the power, to subject or to put into subordination the weak gender is able to take advantage of their vulnerability and ignorance.
Yes.
Yeah. So we see that there is that element of lack of awareness. So it's very important that we are able to sensitize or create awareness to the community so that they are able to know their rights. We also see the aspect of the cultural norms and also the ongoing stereotypes, gender-based stereotypes, where there are some abusive behaviors that are normalized, in society, and which make the weaker gender not have the right, to speak about themselves, that even their ideas are not considered when it comes to, like, for example, in families. We have also the element of power dynamics, where power is rooted so much, and which brings about also these the fights, the misunderstandings, all that, because there is a dominant gender that suppresses, the subordinate gender in this case. We have also the economic inequalities, where the individual is not independent and so has to depend on this other gender that is dominant, and they do not have the opportunity even to decide for themselves. And so these are some of the causes of gender inequality that must be addressed, to be able to support the survivors or the victims that suffer the gender-based violence.
Yeah, I think that is, and we have any statistics that we see, or is it really a scaring number. You may not be very specific, but globally, do you see gender-based violence as being one of the numerically?
Yes, gender-based violence is a global issue,
Yes.
for sure, and of course statistics are there. I can mention the Ugandan statistics. Maybe we have a report that was written in 2011, one of the national reports that was released in 2011, where we see about 56% of women versus 55% of men suffering physical abuse, whereas there's a 26% of women versus the 9% of men suffering sexual abuse. So yes, statistics are there, and we see that it is the women and the girls who are suffering most, and maybe that is why there is this campaign that is going on to be able to dismantle the society norms that put the women under the control of these abusive behaviors.
Okay, I think that's quite impressive, and the numbers a bit from the report and from the research, it's really scaring. And I think it's a good step towards this kind of conversation. Back to you, Mr. Alex. We are trying to explore and understand gender-based violence in human trafficking. What is Salvation Army doing in terms of human trafficking?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Wataka. Salvation Army is doing a lot in ensuring that gender-based violence in human trafficking is coming to an end. As I talk right now, we are having a number of activities that are ongoing in the communities. One is that we have community engagements, whereby we go to the community, we share with them, we also get their views. Then from there, we can know how best we can fight gender-based violence in human trafficking. But when you try to look at these two crimes, you find that most of the causes, they are more or less the same. But when the reason why you normally engage the communities is that they say the community has the answer. There is no way you can go and solve the problem from the community if you don't engage them. And you find that they talk about causes like poverty, unemployment. Then you ask them, what can we do such that we can, stop or combat gender-based violence in human trafficking? We normally come up with a number of initiatives. For example, we are having committees where you have goat sharing, we have portrait keeping, we have VSLA. But we as Salvation Army, we don't just go there and then we impose the initiatives on them, but they are the one to come up with the initiatives.
The initiative, it's a community initiative.
It's a community initiative. Yeah. They come with the initiatives, and then we just be giving them technical guidance on how they can, sustain them such that we can eliminate gender-based violence in the community. And as I told you, most of the reasons that lead to human trafficking are as a result of gender-based violence. Another point is that we use our churches as structures in ensuring that we share the information in the communities. Because, the church has a bigger presence. It has a platform where you can talk to people about these matters. And there is no way someone can learn that this is a problem when you've not given him or her the information. I had my colleague talking about lack of education as one of the causes of gender-based violence. That is why we come out and say, let us create awareness. We make people aware such that they can also inform others and say, gender-based violence is a crime, human trafficking is a crime, and when you insist in them, these are the effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I meant to understand from is quite Salvation Army is doing quite a lot in terms of preventing, human trafficking.
Yes.
One of it is educating the communities, raising awareness, sensitizing, engaging communities to come up with initiatives that can prevent this. Miss Julian, I want us to see how the two are interconnected. Why gender-based violence in human trafficking? How are they interconnected?
Okay, yeah. When there's quite a thin line between gender-based violence and human trafficking. they are so interconnected, they even overlap each other that at some point you may even fail to differentiate. But here is the way they are connected. We see the connectedness in exploitation. Perpetrators of gender-based violence will impose a situation on the victim that which will make the victim susceptible to human trafficking. We have seen various forms, you know, of exploitation, like how my colleague has explained. We also see the other aspect of vulnerability. Perpetrators of gender-based violence and human trafficking normally identify, are able to spot out individuals that are vulnerable, and then they take advantage because they want an individual who is in that state, and they are able to impose their control over them. We also see the connectedness in the area of trauma and stigmatization. Both abuses, or both, I'll call them crimes, both crimes bring about trauma and stigmatization on the individual. We also see the aspect of that they are both criminal in nature, and both of them require legal action to be taken against them, so that these perpetrators are brought to book, you know. So we see there are a lot of similarities, and yet there are differences, incidentally, especially for those of us who are in human trafficking. We have interfaced cases of gender-based violence. But at what point do you differentiate? Like we have seen from the definition, from the two definitions, we have seen that gender-based violence encompasses a wide range of abuse. We see physical abuse, we see a lot of abuse within there, and it is not necessarily that the person needs to be transported from one place to another. It can be an abuse that is, for example, within the family, or within a community, or within an institution. Whereas in human trafficking, there has to be a recruitment and a transportation, a transfer from one place to another. We see also a slight difference in the consent. In most cases, we are not saying that the element of consent may not miss out, but we are saying in most cases in gender-based violence, the victims do not consent to the abusive behaviors that are subjected to them. And yet in the human trafficking, we see the element of consent. That's why we have the trafficker coercing, the trafficker using even threat, abusing his power, using his authority to ensure that this person is exploited. We also see the other element of the other difference between them. We will look at probably the legal aspect. When you look at gender-based violence, it has wide, or rather many laws that that have to do with it. We see both at national level but also at the international level. In Uganda, in this case, we have the Penal Code, we have the Domestic Violence Act, we have the FGM, excuse me, the Female Genital Mutilation Act, we have even the PTIP Act, as Alex explained, the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act in play. So it has a wide range of laws that combat, or that help to that act as penalties as well. And yet with human trafficking, it is an international, it is defined by an international law that was defined by the Palermo Protocol.
Yes.
And it is from that international law that each country derives their laws. For example, in Uganda, we have the PTIP Act, you know, and in that PTIP Act we have the 4 Ps that we use to respond to this human trafficking, or the 4 Ps, yes. Prevention, prosecution, protection, and partnership.
Partnership.
Yes. So it is from that international law where each country is able to derive their the laws that work for them. Yeah. But at the end of the day, how are we able to address these similarities or even differences? We need to look at them in the angle of prevention and protection and persecution, so that we are able to support these survivors. So the efforts that we get through these laws should be able to help us to fight this gender-based violence and human trafficking.
Okay, so I think you have really drawn a very clear and that's understandable how the two are really interconnected. And I think that's very important for us to understand, and why we brought up this topic for discussion. Viewers, remember we are unveiling gender-based violence in human trafficking. And this may be where I want to bring in Mr. Alex. In regards to what Ms. Julian has talked about, how it is interconnected, how we now understand how gender-based violence. Do you recognize that early marriages or the cultural aspect is one of the biggest cause of gender-based violence?
Yeah, I want to say that when we are in our communities, we normally have a number of cases pertaining gender-based violence. But when you try to dig deeper, they come as a result of early marriages.
Yes.
You see, there are people who are getting married when they are not ready. Someone comes in marriage because maybe he wants to appease the spouse. He or she wants to show the public that I'm now a parent. But the bottom line is that these people are not yet prepared on how they can look after the family. So you find that because they were unprepared, there are a lot of quarrels, there are a lot of misunderstanding. At the end of the day, you hear that they are separating. So like we people who are working in the communities, you register cases and cases about gender-based violence. Then when you come to the point of cultural factor, culture plays a bigger role to leading to gender-based violence. For example, like I'm from Masabaland, whereby we have that time of saying that we are going to be circumcised, like as men.
You are transiting from a child to,
now
to a man.
We are transiting from
a boy
childhood
to
to manhood. So I grew up knowing that since I was circumcised, I'm a man. I cannot take any advice from my wife, you see. So even if the wife has which kind of brilliant idea, there is no any singular day that I will take it on. So we end up depriving their ideas. Then at the end of the day, you find that gender-based violence will never end in our in our communities as a result of culture, you see.
I think that is quite impressive. Julian, you seem to be having some point to add.
Well, I was reminded recently when we conducted our research, we realized that the cultural issue, we realized that there were more girls. They were girls because some of them were still underage. Yet they are mothers that have suffered gender-based violence, but also trafficking in persons, so when Alex describes their culture, the circumcision that happens, that transits them from being boys to men. And this is one of the causes that we mentioned, that even when the woman has a brilliant idea. It is not regarded, because of the domination of a certain gender. in the family. And that's why we saw in our research that there were more women, mostly single mothers, that have been vulnerable to trafficking. Why? Because society looked at them as the caretakers, as the ones that are responsible. So every responsibility, they have been the ones who have shouldered them. So they have been put in a position of vulnerability that even they have been victims of human trafficking.
Yeah, and there is these honors, meaning the male power,
Yes.
the power they have.
Chauvinism.
Yes, the stereotype that we are talking about here, where men are regarded as, I think, sorry to say, but they are regarded as more human. I want to assume from what you are saying. And do you think that idea of the honors that men are put on is what has led to early marriages or to forced marriages in our communities?
Yes, when we come to a family setting, when the man, the circumcised man, decides that I want my child, because ultimately they want money, they want dowry, you know. And because the woman in the family does not have much say, the girl will go. Yes. I think sometime last year there was a viral video which went viral, where the girl was told she was put in the vehicle with 4 men and 1 woman, and later we heard that the woman was the auntie. So she was told she was taken somewhere, only to reach in the middle of the road, and they abandoned her and the men carried her. This was a 14-year-old, you know, coming from Western Uganda. So she did not want to get married, but because of the, you know, the cultural norm, you know, back at their home, where, but as long as you have developed breasts, you have, you know, you're shapely, for you are ready for marriage. They will not regard education, you know. Yeah, so I believe that chauvinism, which brings control, is one of those causes that has caused early marriages among children, you know. Yes.
Maybe to add on something about culture.
Yeah.
You see, we are talking about dominance in our families and at the same time in our communities. You find that most of the men in the communities don't regard girl children, because they believe that for you to be counted as someone who has children, you must be having boys around. So you find that the parents who are having only girl children, they regard them as people who will not be able to inherit, you know, the property tomorrow. So these girls, sometimes they are looked at as if they are not human. At the end of the day, the traffickers maximize that opportunity, you know, that vulnerability of them not being regarded as children of the family. Then they are being taken to other areas where even they don't know. And at the end of the day, they are exploited. You get. So we see that culture plays a role in contributing to gender-based violence and human trafficking.
And just right there, these things are happening in our communities, Ms. Julian, Alex. We recognize that they are happening, and it's why organizations, CSOs, international bodies have come up, you know, to talk about this. I mean, to internationally recognize the 16 days of activism. What I want to understand is what is Salvation Army doing, Ms. Julian, in regards to this, to prevent this gender-based violence in our communities?
Okay, thank you so much, Emma, for that. First of all, Salvation Army, whatever it does in line with its mission statement. I love the mission statement of Salvation Army. They preach the gospel, they save souls, but they serve the suffering humanity. So we do not just preach and just leave the individual there. We also follow you up to ensure that you grow. We grow saints, you know, but then we also serve communities, and that is where the community projects are. That's where the anti-human trafficking project is, where we have reached out to communities. We have engaged them right from the grassroots, because we believe, like Alex said, that the solutions come from the community themselves. So we have engaged the communities to through even sensitization, through community awareness. We have engaged even the media. We have ensured that the message reaches up to the last person. We have not just done community engagement or community awareness. We have also trained officers, pastors, as Salvation Army, because we are a faith-based organization. We have pastors, we have religious leaders, I would say. So we have trained them, and they have the knowledge of human trafficking on their fingertips, that when they are engaging communities, human trafficking information is still shared with them. You know, we believe that the church is well positioned in the community to ensure that they are able to preach, much as they can preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Communities are able to trust them, that whatever they say, they will believe. The church has also provided moral guidance to their communities, among them. So, through counseling, we have welcomed survivors, and these survivors have, the church has welcomed them, and we have been able to integrate them back to their communities. We have also directed them towards these community initiatives that the communities have, the goat sharing, the poultry, the VSLA. So survivors of gender-based violence, but also human trafficking, have been part and parcel of these community initiatives. As Salvation Army, we have also done partnerships, because we believe that this work cannot be done alone. We cannot do this work alone. This work is resource intensive. So because in Uganda, Salvation Army is more into awareness creation, we have partnered with organizations, because we know that this is a multi-sectoral approach. Yes, so we have worked with police, we have worked with partner organizations that are in also this work that we do.
I think that's great work. I mean, that Salvation Army is doing, and I'm personally impressed, and I'm happy to be part of this organization that does this quite a number of things in the community. Mr. Alex, we are discussing about gender-based violence. It literally means that it is happening in the community. We recognize through the research that Salvation Army carried out the research study about the role of communities in combating human trafficking. There are things that happen in the community, and people in communities, and people don't take keen interest in them. Are there myths or are there misconceptions about gender-based violence that we can identify in communities?
Thank you so much, Manuel. Truly, in the community, we have a number of misconceptions and myths that the communities are having. One of it is that they believe that it happens only to women. But the truth of the matter is that gender-based violence does not happen on only women. Even men are also victims of gender-based violence. Then they believe that it happens to certain cultures and maybe only other communities, but of which it doesn't segregate. Find that when you go to Giza region, we are having gender-based violence. When you come to Busoga sub-region, we're having gender-based violence. Even when you go to northern Uganda. So it is something that cuts across. This is a problem, the general problem. So there are some people who believe that this may be to only this culture, or maybe this community. No, it is for the whole, world. Then there are other people who believe that it always happens in the people who are married, those ones who are in intimate relationships. It's not true. Even those ones who are not married, they also experience gender-based violence. We are having workplaces. We are having, you know, let's talk about maybe communities. We are having, you know, different places where we are experiencing gender-based violence. So it is not something that you can say it is happening only in people who are what? Married. Then there are others who believe that it's a private matter. It is never a private matter, much as that is the misconception and the myth that the communities are having, but it's something that even can happen to a group of people. Even in institutions, they are also experiencing gender-based violence. And it is as a result of gender-based violence, that's why you are finding human trafficking is not coming to an end, you see. Because gender-based violence, as I said already, it contributes a lot to human trafficking. Then I think another point is that when you talk of gender-based violence, we shouldn't take it as a simple matter in the community. It needs a multi-sectoral approach. So there are communities that think that it is only maybe the police, it is only maybe you know, the civil society organizations are the ones to fight against gender-based violence. It is a problem that needs multi-sectoral approach, such that we can fight it all of us, and then at the end of the day, that's when you are going to be able to combat human trafficking in our communities.
Yeah, I think those, Ms. Julian, do you have another misconception?
Yeah, there's one misconception that, that I find interesting.
Yes.
People think that gender-based violence happens to only poor families. We can be amazed at how many rich families or wealthy families, how much trauma happens right in there. And also we think that when we talk of gender-based violence, we think, oh, that's physical abuse, you know, the fighting, the you know, the battering, the beating and all that. But like we explained it in the definition, gender-based violence also includes sexual assault. It includes sexual harassment. There's a lot of discrimination, you know, that comes with it because of the cultural norms, as we discussed. So we need to demystify these myths and address gender-based violence as it is and criminalize it as it should be and provide harsher penalties. Yeah, because these power dynamics have really normalized some of the abuses, and we think that it is normal. You get,
and just on that same point, coming up with harsher penalties, are there legal frameworks in the country that we have recognized, and also you recognize that this is a very serious matter that needs to be worked on? Do we have legal frameworks in the country?
Yes, of course, the legal frameworks are there. They are in existence. We have them. But I would rather, we just discussed them. We talked of the Penal Code. We talked of the Domestic Violence Act. All these are in place to guide, you know, law enforcement and maybe the judiciary to process the justice. But I think there are challenges, you know, that come with it, that we are not able to utilize and take advantage of these laws to our advantage. Why? Because there has not been enough education in the communities. People may not know. Majority of people do not know that there are these laws in place that can protect them, you know. And then also we have challenges where the victim will not come out openly.
Yeah, and speak.
Yeah, it comes back to the cultural norm. We have had, some women have talked of, I mean, if I report my husband, you know,
who will take care of my family?
Yes, who will take care of my children? Now, of course, they will think of their children, and then they will think, where do I go back home? I can't go back to my father's home, you know. So there is that there are some abuses that we have made normal for the sake of, you know, for the sake of my children, for the sake of my career, for the sake of, you know, for this. But we see all these things happening, and it is quite a challenge that even when we have authorities in place that are able to assist, they cannot unless you report these cases.
Yeah, so we have the laws in place.
Yes.
Do you think there are specific acts in place that people may be aware of or should be aware of? For example, I know we have the Constitution of Uganda. Do we have specific laws or acts that definitely work on this?
Yes, like I said, the laws are in existence.
Yes.
The laws, like we defined in its definition in itself, we have the legal guidance.
Yes.
We have the legal frameworks in place in Uganda to start with, before we even go in international. They are there. But the challenge that is there is the civic education. Communities do not know. For example, I will tell you in the communities that we work with, if you compare before we took our sensitization to those communities, they did not know that there is even a whistleblower, and they did not know that there is the Whistleblower Act that can protect them if they reported cases. So it's about educating the communities. It's very imperative that they get to know these laws that are in place and how they can be able to help them or protect them from such kind of abuses. So yes, the laws are there. The only challenge that is in place is that they are not aware, and that is why we need a multi-sectoral approach, like he said, a comprehensive approach whereby organizations, even individuals, we need to make effort to make sure that we access this information, because it benefits us, it protects us. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's quite. I think, Mr. Alex, in our response, in the response that you are already doing in communities, you indicated there is a project that we are doing. I'm sure you have engaged with survivors of gender-based violence and survivors of human trafficking. What are you doing as Salvation Army towards these survivors that we have in our communities?
First of all, I want to say that as a project, I'm working as a community prevention coordinator, but we are having volunteers, or the ones that we call champions, whom we are working with in ensuring that we spread the message against human trafficking. First of all, we educate, we conduct trainings to champions or volunteers to go back to the ground and also extend the message to the communities. Then secondly, we are, as a project, we are having a number of initiatives that the communities themselves came up with, whereby we are also according the technical advice. For example, we are having VSLA on the side of economic empowerment. They are the ones who said they need to come up with VSLA such that they can save, then they be borrowing in order to support their families economically. For example, someone can borrow the money, then supports a child to school with maybe scholastic materials. Someone can borrow the money to go and boost his or her business. Then secondly, like I talked about God sharing, it was not my idea. It was the idea from the group, It is community-based. They are the ones who came up with the idea of saying, let us be buying goods for each other whenever we come here to be trained about human trafficking. So you find that as a project, we have tried to reach a number of communities as we are trying to spread the message against human trafficking. But another point is that as Salvation Army, we are having, the national task force members who are working together with the community champions. The way that whenever they are having, platforms, for example, we are having, we call them community radios. When they are going to community radios, they move along with the national task force members, such that before a champion can say anything pertaining and human trafficking, the National Task Force member is there also to support him or her. Then another point is that we have platforms like, frequency radios in the communities. As a project, we normally, engage the management of different frequency radios. For example, we have Elgon FM, we have MAM FM. We've been there to see that we talk to our people to spread the message, because as my friend said, Julian, there is no way someone will be having information if he or she has not been educated. So you find that such platforms that we are using are really helping us so much in ensuring that we cut down human trafficking. Then we are having another point being, conducting basic counseling and guidance. Our champions have been empowered to go to the communities and accord basic counseling and guidance to the survivors, even the victims, such that someone can know, this is the problem that I underwent. These are some of the effects that I underwent. Then at the end of the day, you find you are going to avoid re-trafficking, you see. Because if someone is not aware of the message, he or she may take it for granted. But if you sit down someone, then you guide her, then you counsel her and say, please, this is what you can do. Maybe you can join VSLA, maybe you can join maybe the band of, good sharing or portrait. Someone say, okay, I think out of this, I will be able to earn a living. Then I'll be able not to go back to where I suffered from. So as a project, we've engaged the communities through different forums. And as I speak right now, as Julian said, when you compare the time we began this project and right now, there's a very big difference. At least you can go to the community and then someone tells you, we've learned about human trafficking.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand. There's quite a number of things we're doing. Maybe let me hear the perspective of Miss Julian in regards to the information or how we are directly helping the survivors. We know there is basic counseling, but you and I know that dealing with survivors is quite sensitive. What framework is there in Salvation Army to protect the survivors from being re-trafficked or from being re-traumatized because of gender-based violence, and also to protect those dealing with survivors? What measures are in place by the Salvation Army or by the project that are there in place?
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's true, we have worked with survivors, we have repatriated some of them, and we have had a number of programs with them. Like I had said initially, that as Salvation Army, we may not have a specific comprehensive package in terms of maybe medical, but we have worked in partnership with organizations that provide even a holistic package. We have ensured that our survivors have been protected, have been provided the support that is required. When they come, I can give you an example. We had a survivor who left. Both her parents passed on, and she was the eldest of the 3 siblings. So she left, and she was sending money to her 2 siblings. Now, a time came, of course, because of the exploitation that happened, she returned. We were able to return her. So when we tried to integrate her, to start with the family that she was providing money, she was sending money to, they rejected her for whatever reasons that they had. Even the community, I'm talking of the relatives, did not want to receive her because the time she returned, the person who went normal, she came back sick. She was not in a good state at all, traumatized. Now here is the stigmatization, the discrimination. Salvation Army picked her from the street, received her, took her through the basic counseling, She was referred to a hospital. She got the treatment, and then we have integrated her into a VSLA. She's part and parcel of the community.
Yes.
So she was able to be given a modest accommodation because she had a child, you know. I will call it modest because it is not to the standard that that she left, you know. So we have provided the best that we can. We have had the victim support kit, where we first do a needs assessment on this survivor, and we see what is the immediate need. If the immediate need is medical, we refer them either to an organization that has that medical component in it, or to a hospital. And we have been able to support financially. And then if it is a skills development, there is a kit that we give them so that they are able to start. So we have been able to refer these individuals, but also being mindful of protecting their identity.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's quite important. And just maybe my question, what about the Salvation Army, the people dealing with the survivors? Are there any way of helping them? Because you well know the stories can be a bit traumatizing. Are there anything Salvation Army is doing for, or organizations that are doing for the people who are directly working with the survivors? Yes,
we have been able to train the people that interface survivors,
yes.
The ones of Salvation Army to start with. Like Alex explained, that we have what we call in Salvation Army the National Task Force Team. This National Task Force Team is a group of religious leaders in the Salvation Army who have been trained specifically in human trafficking, in trauma-informed care, in psychosocial support and counseling. Not that they can do the work in the professional way, but at that interface stage,
yes.
When you interface a survivor, what is the immediate need, you know? And then from that point, we are able to refer them to health centers or to organizations then that have that holistic package, the medical, the psychosocial support, or even the community-based care support that they require. And then from then we do a follow-up. If we have referred the individual to a partner organization, we try to make sure that we follow up to know have they received the support that they required in the first place.
Yeah, so the people who work with survivors have been trained on how to handle
with the
knowledge.
Yes.
And also because dealing with survivors can also be traumatizing.
Yes.
We all know the types of trauma that a person can end up. There is a point I picked from Mr. Alex when he mentioned that the community has the answer. This thing starts with us and it ends with us. Alex, can you point out the role or what the society is able to do to prevent this issue we are talking about?
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. As I told you earlier, that the community has the answer. The community has a number of ways on how it fights against gender-based violence, more so in human trafficking. The community has the strategy, the way to live. For example, they normally come up with their own initiatives of saying, now, since we are talking about poverty as the major cause causing gender-based violence and hence leading to human trafficking, let us come up with a VSLA, that's the Village Savings and Loans Associations, such that we can be getting something out of our own, then we support our families, isn't it? And I remember, these are some of them, they are parents, they are caretakers, so they know that the thing that maybe press my children, the thing that will maybe press my wife to be vulnerable is maybe because he or she doesn't what? Have money. You see? And as I said earlier, there's nothing bad like dependent syndrome. So they want to economically be empowered such that if someone says, I want to support my child at school with maybe a book, with maybe a scholastic material, maybe like uniform, I cannot pay. You see? It is their community initiative, but for us as Salvation Army or as a project, we just go there to give them technical guidance. You see? Another one I talked about, God sharing. That is their own project. It was my sort of went there. Then I asked them, please, what can we do such that we can fight poverty? What can we do such that we can end human trafficking? Then they said, if you have to come up, maybe buying goats for our souls. Because there's nothing that I put in it. The only thing that I put in is to create awareness about the problem and maybe offering my technical advice on how best they can sustain their project. So you see, that's a community initiative. It is a bottom-up approach. You know, they are the ones what coming up with what.
And I think from what you have just spoken,
yes,
we have seen scenarios that the community cover.
Yes.
You know, they defend their own.
Yes.
They know that person X is a violator, you know, tortures or exploits children or takes, but you see they will try to cover. So Miss Julian, you think having these conversations with the communities, unveiling this thing to the community, knowing that this is wrong, the community is able to, do you think we can break that gap that the community can conceal their own from being touched by the law? Because we have acknowledged that yes, there are gaps, but there are laws in place. You did mention of the Penal Code Act. We have the gender-based, I don't know, the Domestic Violence Act.
Yes.
We have the FGM Act and the rest. Do you think these kinds of conversations, putting in mind, like you talked, the cultural aspects, people want to defend, like you said, they will try to defend and fight as a man. Do you think these conversations can break that chain in the community?
Yes, I believe they can. You see, communities are dynamic, and yet still communities are able to embrace knowledge. But how have you approached them? How have you packaged the information to them? You know, that is very important. I'll just give you just an example. When in our communities, as I speak, the rate of human trafficking was high.
Yes.
And people were seeing it was normal, because we deal with communities at porous borders, and it was okay. But when we package this information to them, now every person is a brother's keeper to their neighbor. The neighbor is able to tell the person who is crossing, where are you going, boldly, you know. And yet before, it seemed like something normal. Before, people were just seeing girls crossing, you know, over, you get. And as a result of that, they were able to come up with village council committees, where when they know that this individual wants to go especially to Arab countries, with the stories that they have had on social media, even amongst themselves, they have had victims in their own communities who have returned from the Arab world not in a good health state, you know. Yeah, so they were able to come up with committees that now they call village council committees, where they provide safe migration advice to this individual, and if they must go, at least they will have gone from a knowledgeable point of view. So we see that yes, it's true, like Alex said, the solution comes from the community itself. So it can start and it can end with them, but how have you packaged this information to them?
So
Maybe
yes,
to add on something, as I said earlier, that the community has the answer. We have around 5 communities which came up with an idea of having the anti-trafficking fund.
Yes.
It was their own idea of saying the system of disturbing maybe people that we are asking for money, why can't we come up with our own back, isn't it? Where we shall be dropping in maybe 100, 200. That money is meant to be helping the victims of trafficking and even survivors. Yes. So, as I told you, it is upon our guidance to tell them that this is the way how you'll be helping these people. When you get her, sit her down, you accord her maybe basic guidance and counseling, you accord her maybe, or him maybe like psychosocial support. Then from there you can say, please, we are helping you to go back home, have 10,000, isn't it? And it is non-refundable. They just give it out of their wish. But that back, it was as a result of the communities to come up with. Yeah.
So I think it's quite important, and I think that involvement of the community, because the community believe in themselves.
Yes.
And maybe just to ask Ms. Julia, we are talking about the task force and then the champion. I want to understand, these are volunteers.
Yes,
where do these volunteers come from, Ms. Julia?
Yeah, the volunteers, the communities that we work with, the communities are the ones who identify this volunteer from amongst themselves. As Salvation Army or as the project, we do not impose the champion or the volunteer on the community. It is the community that decides, of course, basing on the proactiveness, basing on how knowledgeable they can be in understanding the knowledge that is transferred to them through the training. So when we train them, they go back to their communities and they become trainers of the trainees. Yes.
I think it's important to have these people coming from within the communities, because they understand the issues of their communities. They understand what is affecting them. As we come to the end of this discussion, I think it has been quite informative to understand what the Salvation Army is doing, what other organizations are doing, how we are responding to this matter, how we are dealing with the survivors, and what we hope that we are able to do. Ms. Julian, what do you have for as your last words for our viewers today?
Yeah. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. One last word for me, because we are talking about unveiling gender-based violence in human trafficking. We have seen the interconnectedness, but one last word for me is be informative, get information, get to know your rights, get to understand there's information around that you can be able to access, so that they say that knowledge is power. When you have the knowledge, you're able to protect yourself from different kinds of abuses at play. My last word is basically to the girls out there, especially now, the holiday makers. Traffickers are out there. They are like roaring lions, you know. When we talk about gender-based violence, we look at it as if it's individual-centered. Groups are affected, and also schools or school children, school-going children are also victims. So for me, it is my cry, or it is my voice goes out to the women, to the girls who are now in holiday. There are people out there that are ready to take advantage of your vulnerability, but engage yourselves in constructive programs. There are good mentorship programs around that you are able to engage yourself in, and then you'll be able to get the knowledge. I hear of Chisakate. Yeah, you can go to the Chisakate. There are those good retreats that you can go to and acquire the knowledge that you need.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Alex, you deal very closely with the community, and I think you will have better last words to our viewers and to the community people in your capacity as also an individual, as an advocate for better human rights in our community, as a social changer in our community. What could be your last words for our viewers?
Thank you so much, Mr. Emma. I want to ask our community members that please let's get out of our comfort zones and we say no to human trafficking. Because if we say that this is the job for only the government, this is the job for only the civil society organizations, this is the job for only Salvation Army, you see, we may not end up, fighting these two crimes well. So my appeal is that let us come out, then we say no to human trafficking. Thank you so much, Emma.
Yeah, we are so glad that we have been with you for the past 1 hour, dissecting and coming up with ideas on how best we can prevent human trafficking and even gender-based violence. Like I did mention, this is an annual appeal that happens every year. And this year's theme for International Activism Day period is invest to prevent. Investing does not mean only in money. It means you as an individual coming out to speak, just like Salvation Army and the rest of the organizations are coming out to actively advocate for these evil act in our communities. Therefore, we appeal to you, the community people, with the rest of our stakeholders, to join, invest in giving information, invest in advocating, invest in creating awareness. And in that, we are able to defeat this evil act of gender-based violence. We join the rest of the world in these 16 days to commemorate and to even advocate for this. And we shall continue having our conversations. Please do not stop here. Continue having these conversations on our platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, even on Twitter, we are there. Even those friends of ours on Instagram, please join us and have this conversation. I'm reminded it's not Twitter, it is X at the moment. So please, members, join us to advocate for this. And we are having another conversation on 10th. So we shall have another interesting conversation. And this time we are going to have more advanced and good people with vast knowledge to discuss this issue. And we appeal to you to continue having this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate you so much for sparing your time to come and have this wonderful discussion. Your input is is wonderful, appreciated. And of course, we have already had our last words. Do you have advice for these perpetrators of gender-based violence?
Perpetrators, the law will catch up with them.
Thank you. I think that's very important. And Mr. Alex, what is your advice to, I don't want to speak from what I said, what is your last word for all advice to these perpetrators of gender-based violence?
I want to ask the perpetrators that this is the high time that you stop perpetrating the victims, because what you're doing is not right.
And it is ungodly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Until we meet next time, my name is Wataka Emmanuel, and God bless you so much.